welcome to episode 14 of our Little Harbour Homewares shop project. Now in today's episode I'm going to be showing you how to build a little glazed door cupboard, and we're also going to be dressing the shop counter. So without further ado, let's get started. So we're going to begin today by making the little glazed door cupboard that will be on the first floor next to our large unit. So begin by cutting all of the pieces needed apart from the pieces needed for the doors, and then we'll make those after we've constructed the main body of the unit. Prepare your pieces in the normal way, sand along all edges and sand the surfaces of each piece using a 500 grade sandpaper. And we're going to begin by attaching a leg to each side of each side piece. So begin by applying glue along each edge of each side piece, and that will be the long edge. As we're only using 3mm 1/8 of an inch thick legs, we're not going to be applying mouldings. Make sure you've got a nice flush line along the top there, and then you can bring in the remaining leg. Again, making sure you've got that nice line along the top of all three pieces. Make sure as well that they're all pressed against your work surface. And I'm just going to bring in my spare pieces of strip wood, and you can use these for a couple of things. So the first thing is to make sure you've got that straight line along the top there, so just push all pieces up against it, but you can also press the legs against the side with it. And the reason I do that is that then you're not, if you do it with your fingers, you can tend to pull the legs inwards, so they'll sort of come inwards and you won't have that nice square line at the top. But if you use these strips, then you're sort of applying even pressure all the way down. You can then remove any excess glue carefully without knocking any of the pieces out of place. Final squeeze. That piece can be pushed to one side to dry. You can do the same with the remaining side. So before we start construction, we're going to drill the holes for the doors, and you want to do that in the top and bottom pieces. So of the four pieces you've got here, you've got your top piece from the 2.5mm sheet wood, the 3/32 of an inch, so pop that to one side, and then your top and bottom pieces are just slightly narrower than your top piece. So it's those two pieces that you want, so put that to one side as well. And we're going to drill the holes 1.5mm, 1/16 of an inch, in each corner along the front edge. So begin by making a little pencil line along the front edge, 1.5mm, and do that from each end of the wood. And then turn like that and go back 1.5mm, 1/16 of an inch, and do your little dot. The same at that end. And then I've got a 0.75mm bit in my drill, but you just want a small bit which is about the size of a dressmaking pin, which is what we'll be using for the hinges. And then drill down into the little pencil dot. And then do the same thing with the top piece, or bottom piece. So we're now ready to begin construction, and we're going to begin by attaching the back piece to the inside edge of the back leg like that. So apply glue along the short edge of the back piece. And then glue it into place so that it's flush at the top of the leg as well. And you're really just placing it alongside the join between the side and the back leg. And once this has sort of started to dry into place, I'll pick it up and show you what I mean. I'm holding on to it as I get rid of the excess glue. Just give that a good press down. And if I pick that up and show you, see how you've got the little overhanging lip on the back leg there, the same as you've got at the side. So we're now going to attach the top piece, and this is one of the pieces that you've drilled the holes in. And remember that the holes will be along the front edge. So apply glue to a side and back edge. And again, that will sit on the inside edge of the joined pieces, and so that it's flush along the top. So use your finger to make sure you've got a flush edge, and then you can bring that back piece in to meet the top piece, and that squares the whole piece off. Press those together. Make sure that corner's right into the corner down there, as that can sort of tend to throw the piece out. Give it a good press. Again, get rid of your excess glue. We're then going to do the same with the bottom piece, and again make sure that your drilled holes are towards the front open edge. And I had planned on having supports around the bottom of the legs, and then once I'd glued the legs into place I realised that I hadn't put them on, so I've missed those out. But it doesn't really matter, as it just means that we'll definitely be able to fit our basket of bedding underneath. Plenty of room under there. So make sure that you're flush with the bottom of the back piece and also the bottom of the side piece there. Get it lined up, and then again you can pull that back piece in to meet it and square it off again. Use your thumb to make sure you've got a nice flush edge, and then press it all together. Making sure I'm keeping that flush line along the bottom there. There's a bit of glue there as well. And then we can attach the remaining side piece. So apply glue to the edges the side piece, or edges of the unit rather, and then attach the remaining side. First of all, making sure you've got a nice flush edge along the top there. Need a nice straight edge to stick our top piece to, and then you also want to make sure that this front leg is lined up with these front edges of the top and bottom piece. So quite a few bits to check as you sort of press it into place. You want a nice straight edge along here as well. So press it down and carefully pick that up and sort of get in and remove the excess glue. Check along that back join as well. I'm going to pop that there, and I'm going to apply a piece of masking tape straight over the side there. Over like that. Pull it nice and tight. There. Lay that down, and then we'll put another piece right across the front as well. I might have cut that piece a bit too long. Pull it all together nice and square, like that, and that piece can then be left to dry. So as usual, I've given the measurements for the pieces for the doors in the cutting list, but they are just to be used as a guide. So when you come to cut the strip for the doors, measure the door opening, so measure from top to bottom, and deduct less than ½ millimetre from that amount, and that will be your door sides, and you'll have 4 of those. Then measure across the opening, and then you need to deduct the width of those 4 pieces. Now we're using 3mm strip, which is 1/8 of an inch, but I do find sometimes that when I measure they are just slightly thicker than 3mm, so the 4 together could give you an extra sort of 1/2 millimetre to 1mm. So put your 4 pieces together, measure them, deduct that from your total width, and then divide that by 2, and that will give you your door tops and bottoms. Your central bit here will be the same width as the top and bottom, because obviously we're enclosing all of that. And then again you're sort of doing that deducting, so you'll take the width of these 3 horizontal pieces from the length of the side, divide that by 2, and that will be these little bits. But I don't know if you remember how we made those little frames in the last episode, but we'll be doing a similar thing as we did there. So we'll sort of begin construction and then we'll measure and adjust this last little bit at the bottom accordingly to make it all fit together, just in case they're sort of slightly out. But if you just get these sides, top, middle and bottom all cut to size, and then these pieces we can adjust once we start gluing it all together. But before we start gluing it together, we're just going to round over these outer door sides, and that's on the edges that they open, and that will help them to open more smoothly. So take your first side strip, and we're just going to do this in our hand using a piece of 240 grade, or just something slightly stronger than the 500. And we really are just going to take off 2 corners of this strip. So support it in your hand and then just sweep the sandpaper along at a 45-degree angle. And when you're working on a piece of strip like this, it's very difficult to do it against the sandpaper on the desk, so you need to do it in your hand like this. And just sweep it along a few times. If I show you from the top, you can see how that's just starting to sort of round off. So then you want to do that on an adjacent corner. And it doesn't have to be completely rounded, but you'll find that by just taking off these sort of edges of the corners, that will help the door to open and close more smoothly. So you have a look from the top there, if you can pick that up. But just very slightly rounded, and then do the same thing with the outer side part of the other door. You're now going to make a little mark in each of those rounded sides for where we need to drill the hole for the pin hinge. So slot the piece into place and make sure it's sitting towards the front edge of the unit like that, and then bring in your dressmaking pins and just poke that into the top until you feel it sort of just poke into the strip. And we're not trying to push it all the way through, we're just making that little mark so we know where to drill the hole. Oops. And the same at the bottom as well, making sure that your strip is staying where it should. Actually just get hold of that, push that one in as well. You can then remove the pins, and then we've got our little marks for where to drill the holes. So again, do that with both door sides. Making sure as well that you're sitting it so that rounded edge is along the side of the leg there. Attach your first door side into your desk vise, and as usual I've got my piece of kitchen towel in here which will prevent the jaws of the vise from marking the strip wood. And then we're using the same drill bit again, the 0.75mm, 1/32 of an inch, or just one of your smaller bits, which is about the same thickness as a dressmaking pin, which we're using for the hinges. And then hold it as upright as you can over your little mark and drill down. And you want to go down by about 6mm or 1/4 of an inch, and you can check that by using one of your dressmaking pins pop it in the hole, put your thumbnail at the top and then pull that out, and you can see if you've gone down far enough, and that's plenty there. So do the same at the other end. So we're now ready to construct the doors, and we're going to begin by doing a little pencil mark in the centre of these horizontal strips. So bring in your smaller rule, and this is just for placement of the vertical divides. Like that. And put those back into position, and then begin by applying glue at one end of the top strip and attach that to the top of the side piece. So you've got a nice flush line along the top. Press that into place. We're then going to put the little vertical strip so that it sits centrally under that little pencil mark we've just made, and you can apply glue to both ends of these pieces, or of this piece. Push that up towards that piece like that. They're so tiny, it's all a little bit fiddly. And then bring in the central support. Get that into place and then move that horizontal one in if you need to. Press it all together. And then we can just put the bottom one into place, and then just take a measurement of that gap that we've got at the bottom there. Trying to get my rule in without knocking the camera over. And that is just under 12.5. And what's my little strip? I might just need to shave a little tiny bit off of that. And to do that you can just use your craft knife. It really is just a tiny little bit I want to take off. Then you can sort of try that into place. Just sort of dry fitting it to make sure that it's all going to fit. And that's got a nice fit there. So again, apply glue to each end of this piece. Put that into place centrally below the line, level with the one above. You can put the bottom piece into place. The more bits you add, the sturdier it becomes. So you want again that flush bottom line there, and then press it all together. Oops, just knocked it out. And then we can apply glue to these ends and get that final side on. Slide that into place, again making sure you've got the flush top and bottom. If there are any little discrepancies, don't worry, because we'll sand this whole piece once the glue has dried and make sure that it's all square and straight. I think this final strip is a little bit longer than my first one, so I've got a little bit of a overhang there. So just really carefully slide that along your work surface, and then you can do the same with the remaining door. So whilst the doors are drying, we can prepare our top piece, and for this we're going to bevel one long edge and both short edges. So with your sandpaper flat on your work surface, move around a little bit there, hold the piece at a 45-degree angle and sweep it towards you, keeping it at that angle. And that's just starting to bevel off, so keep going until you've got a nice sharp bevel. Like that. And then do the same at each end. You can then tidy that piece up in your hand with a piece of 500 grade sandpaper. Once your doors have completely dried, you can sand them face down on your sandpaper, supporting them as much as you can with your fingers, and then just go round in small circular motions. And that will not only remove the pencil marks, but it will flatten out all of these front edges, so we've got a nice flush piece. And then you can also sand just very gently along the top and bottom, just going along in one direction so that you don't round off the corners. And again, that will make sure that we've got nice flush top and bottom edges. And then you can actually dry fit them into place and just see if there's any other tiny adjustments that you need to make. And I'm really pleased with those, they fit in there really nicely. So I just now want to make a couple of little doorknobs using a cocktail stick. So begin by snipping off the pointed end of the cocktail stick. And I find it easier if you actually roll the cocktail stick along underneath the blade of the knife, applying a bit of pressure as you go. And then it will come off like that. And then get a piece of sandpaper. I'm going to search for a 240 piece here. And then you just want to round over that cut end. So I'm just twisting the cocktail stick round between my fingers. I'm just sort of sanding over the top to create a little rounded end. And this is a really easy way of making little door or drawer knobs when you've got a really small door frame or a tiny drawer. I'm sure you've seen me do this before. When I first started out making doll's house furniture, I wasn't aware that you could actually buy such things as little wooden door and drawer knobs, so I always used to use this technique. Then place that down on your work surface, and you just want it to be a couple of millimetres long, so hold on to the bit that you want to keep and then cut again, twisting it along beneath the blade of the knife. And I always say hold on to the bit you want to keep, because you might have just heard the cocktail stick flew off there onto the floor, and when it's these little tiny bits you'll never find them again. So make 2 of those, and you can then glue them into place in the centre of the door frame. And you'll need tweezers for this part. Like that. And then get rid of any excess glue. And for this piece I'm going to be using this lovely blue emulsion, and this is by Wix and it's called Tidal Wave. And I've made a little masking tape handle there to go on the bottom of the top piece, and you just need to paint around the edges of the underside and then obviously the top, and this way you don't get as much paint on your fingers, and then you can use it as a prop when you stand the piece to dry. So that's one coat of paint on each of those pieces. I think that's such a lovely colour, that blue. So I'm going to leave that to dry now. It's 4 o'clock. And I've got another project to get on with, so I'll come back to this in the morning and we can finish putting that together. And then I'm really looking forward to dressing the shop counter. So once we finish this little cupboard, we'll make a start on that. So I'll see you again in the morning. So I left these pieces drying overnight, and then first thing this morning gave them a gentle sand, and we're now ready to fit the acetate to the doors. So I'm using this 0.5mm thick acetate, and this comes in A4 sheets, and you'll find those in my Etsy shop. But you can also cut this sort of acetate from packaging, you know, something like the box that tomatoes come in or something like that, or some cakes have this acetate around them. And you only need a tiny little bit for this project, so you might be able to find something in your recycling box. And to glue the acetate into place, I'm using the Deluxe Materials Glue and Glaze, which is especially for acetates, and it doesn't mark or fog the plastic. And this is my new bottle, so I can still use the little tip that I've got here at the back. So I don't need to dispense any onto a piece of card. So I'll just put the tip on there, and the tip broke on my last one, so I've always just had to use it as I use normal glue with a cocktail stick, but this makes it so much easier. And you really do only need a tiny little bit of this. Let me come in a little bit closer. So just put it around the edge of the frame like that. And you don't really need to go onto the inner part of the frame. The glue around the outside edge will hold that nicely in place. I'm just giving the acetate a wipe, get rid of the dust. And just drop that on there. Give it a press down, and don't worry if the glue sort of spreads onto the front of the acetate, because once it's dry you can actually just remove it with a cocktail stick and it comes away almost like rubber. And I'm just going to use my piece of tissue just to get rid of some of that excess that's coming out around the back there. I've probably even used a little bit too much there, and you saw how much I put on. So you really do need a tiny bit. Like I say, this bottle I've got here is new. I must have had the last one for a good 10 years or more. Same with the other one. Try and put on a little bit less this time. Okay, they can then be left to dry. So we're now ready to fit the doors, so begin by pushing a pin into each of the drilled holes. Just pop it in like that, and then just very gently press it down on your work surface, just so you know that it's all the way in. And then use your pliers or wire cutters to trim each of those pins to about 3mm or 1/8 of an inch in length. Okay, so then take the pin out of the bottom of the first door. Push the pin up through the top. Get the door lined up, do a nice flush front edge, and then push the pin back through the hole at the bottom. And this doesn't always go in first time, sometimes you have to search for it, but that luckily has gone in quite easily. Don't push it all the way in, try the door. Make sure you're happy that it opens nicely, and then you can push the pins all the way in. Put that top one down as well. And then do the same with the other door. Get the door lined up. Bit of a tight fit now they're both in there. Again, I quite like that rather than having gap in between the doors. And then again, pop the remaining pin in. Oops, there we are. Again, don't push it all the way in. Try the door. It opens a little bit wider than the first one, but that's okay. I'm going to put some things inside, but I'll have the doors closed for display purposes. And then you can push that one all the way in as well. Like that. Pop that top one down. And we can now attach our unit top. So we begin by applying glue to the top of the unit. Again, get it all the way along the edges into the corners. Like that. And then we're going to place it so the straight edge is flush with the back of the unit, and that's with the back of those legs, and so that there's an even overhang at each side. So get it lined up. I'm just trying to slide it along a little bit. And the overhang is usually the thickness of those bevels that we've made. I've got a little bit of pin sticking out the top there still, so I'm going to press the top actually onto the pin. Give it a good squeeze and then remove your excess glue. And when I say sort of line it up with the back of the legs, it's because obviously the legs protrude a little bit. So you're lining it up with those rather than the sort of back of the unit. Okay, so I'm going to grab a bit of masking tape and just pop a couple of pieces straight over the top. And this is low tack, but if it does pull off any of the paint, we can just touch that in again. And I'm going to put a piece over the front as well. Now my left-hand door doesn't open very wide, but I'm going to open them and just see how many clamps I can get in there, just to really pull that top piece down. Just really carefully open the doors. Yeah, I should be able to get a couple in there. It's that corner where it's not sitting down as far as it should, just where that little pin is sticking out underneath. Let me at least try and get one in there. I'll get another one in. Move that one over a bit. And that there. That's actually sitting down quite nicely on that side, so that's all right. It was just that corner. That's holding that down quite nicely. So that piece can now be left to dry, and I now want to start adding accessories to the shop counter, which I'm really looking forward to. So all we've got on the little counter so far is the sellotape dispenser and a spare roll of tape. And I can't remember if I actually shared that tutorial to this channel. I did it originally as a YouTube video, so I'll go and check, and if I haven't shared it, I'll put it in the other bits and pieces tag. So you can find that there, and that's really easy to make, and I think that looks really nice. And then I just took these little scissors out of my accessories box as well, and these are fixed, but I really like these because they're true to scale. They're only about 14mm long, so just over ½ an inch. And some of these that you can buy are sort of over 1 inch long, and they'd be more like garden shears in real life. So do always go for the sort of smaller pairs of scissors, and we'll make a lovely little pen pot in a moment to put those in. But I want to start just by making a little box, and this is similar to something that I use for my packaging, and I've got my tissue paper in it, and that's what I want to do here. So I've drawn out the plan for the box. Let me move in on that. I'm sure you all know how to make these sort of box templates, but I had to think twice about it just now when I was drawing this out, so I'll just show you how I did mine. So I work out the width and depth of the box. So I want it 38mm, 1.5 inches long, by 25mm wide, and that's 1 inch. So this will be the actual box part, and then these are the flaps. So to work out the height of your flaps, half the size of the width of your box, and then when they fold in, they'll meet in the middle, and then this central part is the height of the box, and I've just gone for 10mm, or just over 3/8 of an inch, and then just do a little tab at one end so that you can actually join the box together. So I'll get this cut out, and I really like making boxes, and this is actually a manila card, so I've drawn on the rigid side of it, so the actual box will be this lovely brown card. And I remember buying, I must have bought a pack of about 12 sheets of this manila card, and it's come in useful for so many different projects. And I think boxes are so easy to make, but they really do add a bit of realism to a scene. I've done quite a few of these in my little messy shed. I've done some little boxes. I haven't quite snipped that off. And you can print onto the card first if you wanted to. And then I find that it helps if you fold along a rule to get some nice sharp lines in there. So just fold it along the rule like that. And it doesn't matter if you're sort of crinkling it or bashing it up a bit as you go along, because we just want it to look like an old box that the tissue paper's been delivered in, and then they've decided to keep it in there. Go along those long lines as well. And then cut down the flaps. I just realised the camera's quite close in, so let me move out a little bit. Helps if you can actually see what I'm doing. And then just fold it all together. Fold that little tab in as well. Just fold that along the rule, I forgot about that bit. Press that end together. And fold in the bottom part. And I'm going to put a bit of glue on. But then I'm also going to put some brown tape on. So fold those in like that. Bit of a gap at the bottom where the folds are a little bit wider than my measurements. Press that all down. And as I'm sort of folding it in, I'm sort of purposely bashing it up a little bit to make it look like it's being pulled about a bit. And I don't mind it looking a little bit messy under the counter. When I worked in the shop, it was always a little bit like that. The bit the customers saw was always lovely, clean and sparkling and tidy. And then underneath the counter was always a little bit of a mess. And you'd never want them to sort of come behind and see. Okay, so let me grab a little bit of brown tape. So I've just stuck a piece of brown parcel tape to my work surface here, and then used my craft knife to just cut that into strips. Peel those off like that, and then just sellotape up the box. Overhang in there. And then do the same at the top there. So we're sort of sealing it up. You want it open anyway, so it doesn't matter if it's not sealing, but just to get it sort of in the right place. And then bring in your craft knife and actually sort of open the box. Cut it all free like that. I'm going to fold those back on themselves like that. Fold those ends in. Let's just stick those flaps down. Don't want them taking up too much room. Once that dries into place, I'm going to grab some tissue paper. So I've got this lovely dark blue tissue paper here, and I've just cut off some sections which I want to fold and just sort of push into the box. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue in the bottom of the box there. With tissue paper you really only need a tiny bit of glue to stick it down, and then sort of fold it into sections like that, just to really fill the box so that it can be seen, obviously from when we're glancing in or looking from the front, you know what I mean. I just want to sort of put a few extra pieces on top that we can fold over the edges. Like that. Pull that sheet down. Coming over the front there as well. Little crease there. So always have a think about how things would look. You know, it's not going to stay neat as people are digging in and out of it throughout the day to wrap the purchases. And then that can sit in there. So next I want to make a little stock take clipboard. So I've been into Excel and I've created some stock sheets. See if I can get that to focus in on that. And then I've left a bit of just the white paper at the top there because I want to make a little clip and I didn't want to hide the writing. And I've done, I think I did 5 of these, just so that we can create some dog-eared pages and we can still see the stock sheets underneath. And then I've just cut again from my manila card a piece of card that's just 1 millimetre bigger on each side, and I'm going to stick these sheets to it. Put a little bit of glue on the back of each one so that we can ruffle them up a bit. I just always think things look more interesting, a little bit of a fold in them or a crease. Like that. And then I've got here, let me come out a little bit again, some aluminium sheet or aluminum sheet depending upon where you're watching from, and I want to use this to make the little clip. Now this is a really nice thin sheet, easy to cut with scissors, but it's a little bit thicker than aluminium foil. But if you haven't got anything like this, then you could use foil. If you've got sort of that, you know, that thicker type that you can buy. So I just want to make, first of all, the little clip. Okay, so like that. So probably a 12mm 1/2 inch square there, which just fits nicely behind there. And then that top bit, I just want to shape off the corners. So So this is probably about 3mm. Just go like that. And I'm going to make a little hole in that using my scribe. In the middle there. Make sure that's gone all the way through, and then we can glue clipboard to it. Make sure that's sitting centrally. I'm just using my wood glue for this. As long as one side is wood or card, then you're okay. You could use a thin piece of wood for the backing on this, or you might want to use a coloured piece of card or something. Obviously clipboards come in all different colours. And I just want to make a little clip bit at the front, so actually this piece I cut off might do, and I want that to go along there and then sort of fold over the top of the pages. So I'm going to make the little fold first. It'll sort of look like that. Not quite even. I can cut a little bit off that end. Like that. And then lift it up. You'll see what I'm trying to do in a moment. I know it all looks a little bit messy at the moment, but I sort of just want it to look as though it's joined to the bit on the back, the hook bit. And I'm going to shape those corners around. Try and get them to sort of a round shape. Partly round. And again, it's like these sort of tiny little details that are practically going to be hidden away, that we end up spending a lot of time on, but it is so worth it in the end, because all those little details people will notice. Just want to give that a firm press. Looks alright, doesn't it? And I was just sort of planning on tucking that just in there at the end of the counter, just having it sort of stood in there. So I just wanted to show you the little unit in place, and I really like that. I'm glad that I did a different colour for the unit, otherwise that would have all looked a little bit too white along there. But I like that blue. A little bedding basket underneath there for people to rummage through. And whilst I was in Excel making that little stock sheet, I just made up some tiny little signs as well and price tags, and I've got one here that says please call for an assistant to remove items from the top shelves. So I'm going to stick that on the side of the unit, and then I've got beach bags, cushions and crochet cushions prices, and also just a price to put a little label on the front of the unit. So I'm going to cut all of these out now, and for this I just used my Monotype Corsiva font, which is the main sort of shop font that I used for the name of the shop, and then the little pricing signs, because there's not so much on them, are a font size 6, and then the sign where I've got please call for an assistant, that's a font size 5, just because there's more wording in there, and if you did it in 6 it would make it a larger label. And I've also used 6 for the price there. But obviously that's something you can sort of have a play around with and get the sizes right. And I just put a nice blue border around them, and I've used blue writing as well rather than black. I thought it looks a little bit less stark, you know, a bit more subtle. Suits that colour scheme as well. So I'm going to start with the call for an assistant label, and I'm going to put that, oh, that was upside down. Good job I noticed that. So I'm going to put that at the top there. I'm just trying to judge by eye that I'm getting it straight. That looks straight. Let me just sort of tilt that and have a look. It needs to go up that way a bit. Okay, so that's there. And I'm just sticking them on with my Gorilla Wood glue. They're going to be permanent, so. And then I'm going to put the little beach bag one on there as well. And I'll sort of have that underneath the centre. Okay, let me just tip that up and have a look. Yeah, that looks okay. Like that. And then I thought I'd have the little cushion labels actually stuck to the front of the shelves here. And then with the towels, I thought I might do like a little triangle price board, because obviously you all have a hand towel, bath towel, beach towel, and I'll have that stood on the top of that little unit beside them. And then these, I'm just imagining, would be individually priced. So, and like the shop assistant in me is coming out there. So I'm just going to put a little bit of glue along the top edge of these ones at the back, and I'm just using normal printer paper for this. No, but you don't have to do it this way. You could do like a little piece of card, make it into like a little, you know, pyramid almost, and then you could actually work it in so it sort of stood on your shelves. That looks quite, ooh, not my counter. I think that looks quite good. Do this other one as well. Yeah, like that. Looks quite good. Makes it look more like a shop when you start putting the labels and things on. And I haven't been to a shop in such a long time. Oh, I did pop into Co-op a couple of weeks ago, but I've been quite, you know, careful with self-isolating, and we have our shopping delivered, so I haven't really had to go into a shop for a while. Do everything online now. But next time I am in a shop, I shall have a look at some of the signs and things and see what else there is. We could perhaps make a little wet floor sign on a little A board or something, but we'll see. I'm sure we'll all come up with loads of ideas as the project moves on. But I quite like that. So I'm going to put that back into place, and then the little one for the price of the unit, which I'm trying to pick up, I just sort of cut out and then cut into a point at the end there, and then I made a little hole with my scribe, and I'm going to go and get some cotton and we'll actually tie that around the handle, but I'll do that after lunch. It's 1:10 now. I'll go and have a bite to eat, and then we'll come back and carry on with this and with the shop counter. And I'm just using normal white cotton for this. I think if you use cord, sometimes it looks a little bit too chunky, and if you think about what size it would be in 12th scale, even something that's just a millimetre thick would be sort of 12 millimetres thick. It'd be like rope almost. So we really do just want a little thin bit of cotton. And then I'm just really carefully going to try and knot this without obviously tearing through my actual label. So I really want a little bit of a hanging loop on there. Go a little bit tighter. Something like that, and then I'm going to tie a knot. Just go like that. And then trim that off. And pull the little knot to the back of the label. Getting really careful so you don't rip your bit of paper. And I'm going to stick the knot down at the back of the piece of paper there. And let's just put a little bit onto the actual handle of the cupboard. I think I'm going to just dot a little bit onto the back of the label as well, so I can sort of stick that to the edge of the door. What was already on there, might have done it. There. I think that's quite reasonable for a nice cupboard like that. So I now want to make some little paper bags, you know, those little thin bags that you get in gift shops. So I didn't want to use my like nautical little printed card. Where is it? That's there, because that's going to be a little bit too thick, and I want these just to look like very sort of thin paper bags. So I went onto Google and I put in free pick nautical or free pick shells, and you get loads of images come up and you can save them to your computer. They're quite large, so I scaled them down to 30mm square, and then this is about 12 squares or 16 squares, sorry, all put onto a new sheet, and they all join up at the edges as well, so you get a continuous pattern. So let's have a go at making some little bags, and I'm going to do 3 sizes, and I'll use this for the large, and then that will sit on the bottom of the pile because I really like that one, which I'd like to have sitting at the top. Shells and starfish on there. So I'm going to do the largest one 25mm square or 1 inch, then going down to 20mm or 3/4 of an inch, and then down to 15mm, which is 5/8 of an inch. So for the larger bag, has this got a upright? No, that's just a sort of mixed pattern. You want to add on another couple of millimetres to the size that you want it, so we've got a little flap to fold up at the bottom when we come to stick it together. So it's going to be 27mm tall, so go along your piece of paper and mark off 27mm, and that's about 1 1/16 of an inch if you're working in inches. And 27 there. Do that at both ends of your piece of paper. Like that. Join those up. And then you want to go across the piece by double the size. So again, we'll be folding 2 flaps into the back. So you want sort of double the width that you actually want the bag. So on the larger bags, this piece of paper will give me 8 bags. Join those up as well. And cut out your squares, or oblongs in this case. So take one of your oblongs and fold in each edge like that, so that you're folding in roughly, you know, in half, creating a bag half the size. And you can glue that down. Just use a tiny bit of glue. Like that. Make sure you haven't glued it together, and then glue together the bottom of the bag. Okay, another little bit of glue in there. Press that down. And then you want to just fold a little bit over at the bottom. So I'm using my rule again, just to make a crease in there. And then glue that down. Like that. That's our little paper bag. We can have those in a little pile, either on or under the counter. So there's my first lot of little bags, and I've cut out the next sort of medium and small ones, and you can do it again as though you're sort of on a bit of a production line, just to sort of speed up the process. So just make all your initial folds, and then you can glue them together along the back. And I found that it helps if you just put your rule in there and glue it down like that, and then you know you're not gluing the two sides together. And then slide the rule out. Obviously you need a thinner rule to do that. And do your next one. I don't know if it is any quicker, but it just feels quicker than sort of doing them, you know, one at a time. Then you can go through and glue the bottoms of the bags together. Then you can go along and make your little fold at the bottom of each bag. Just fold it up like that, put it to one side. And then you can go along and glue those little flaps down. So that's my paper bags complete, and I've actually glued these into place down here now. So I've got the large bags with the smaller ones on top, just because I didn't want it to look sort of too spread out, just for the sake of it. And then I've glued 3 of them into a little fan shape here, and I'll actually have that sitting on the counter. Okay, so I've gathered a few bits and pieces here for our next lot of accessories for the counter. I'm going to do a tin of polish and a duster, and I want a roll of J-cloth and a roll of kitchen towel. And that's just because I remember from working in a shop, you always had these things handy, and when there were no customers around, you'd go round and have a quick dust, make sure everything looked clean and tidy. So we'll have those under there. And then I want to make a little collection box for the top of the counter. So I've printed off this image. I don't know if that will focus in there. So it says Save the Dolphins. And I thought that would be appropriate for our beach themed shop. And I've got a piece of dowel here, and I've just been around with a piece of fine grade sandpaper and rounded over the top. And I now want to add a bit of paint to this. And I want this to be about 15mm high. I'm going to paint a little bit more than that. And it's always easier to paint it while the piece of dowel is still long, because then you've got somewhere to hold, so you don't get paint all over your fingers. And then you can cut it to the length you want it. And this is the navy blue, our main shop colour. Okay, so I'll go and prop this somewhere to dry. And whilst that's drying, I'm going to make the kitchen towel. And I'm sure you've all seen me make the kitchen towels before. Super easy to make. Just begin with a piece of grey card for the roll, and this is 18mm high, which is just under 3/4 of an inch. And then roll it around a paintbrush or something, or a pencil. And you want to glue it into a cylinder, leaving a hole of about 4mm, but it doesn't have to be exact. So then trim your card so you're leaving a little bit to overlap, so you can actually glue it together. I'll go about there. bit of glue. So just hold it on your paintbrush or pencil there and apply the glue, just so we keep it in a nice round shape. Like that, press it together and then just slide that off of there, pop that to one side to dry, and we'll cut some kitchen towel. So cut some strips of kitchen towel to the height of your roll. And then if you've got more than a 1-ply roll, just sort of pull the pieces apart. Can't get this nail I chipped while trying to open a pistachio nut, and I had to cut it down really short. It has sort of like a split down the middle and it was really painful, but now I can't do anything with it, so it's really annoying. So pull those apart like that. And this is probably a bit of a big pattern on this, but it's the only one I've got at the moment. But it's not going to be too noticeable in this project, so I think we can get away with it. But they would be pretty big indentations in real life. Okay, so bring in your roll and just put a little bit of glue along one side. Actually, try and put it at where the join is, and we'll hide all that at the back then. And then just bring in one piece, attach it and wrap it round. And a full kitchen towel would be about 10mm or just over 3/8 of an inch, so you can keep going to that size, but of course it can be smaller than that. And keep pushing it at the top and bottom with your fingers as well to make sure that it stays on the roll and doesn't sort of go, you know, where you wind it and it goes all over the place. And then when you get to the end of that piece, you just want to put a little bit of glue on again, a tiny bit, and actually put it on top because it will seep through. Like that. And then you can bring in your next piece, join it on like that. And keep going. I like making these, I think they're good fun to make. And then when you get to that last bit, just sort of glue half of it down here, so just put a little dot of glue on, like that. And then I like to just roll the top back a little bit, like that. Make it look a little bit messy. So that will go under there somewhere. Now let's have a go at making the J cloth. So I've cut some strips of J cloth as well, again to the same height, the 18mm, and then these don't normally have an inner roll, so I just like to start them off around a piece of cocktail stick. So cut a piece of cocktail stick to the same size, and then you can just glue that to one end of one of your strips and just sort of roll it around. Always tricky getting started, and then you can just sort of whiz along once you've got that first bit round, like that. So just hold on to the cocktail stick to keep it nice and tight and go round. Same thing again when you get to the end of a strip, just glue that down. This is a little bit thicker, so might need a bit of glue on both sides. And then glue your next strip on. And these rolls can be really big. I think the one that Matt bought was probably about, I don't know, nearly a foot in diameter, I think. It's a huge thing. I'm not going to go that big. I'll probably just do these 3 strips. And again, I've just left a little bit folded over on the last strip there, so that can go under there as well. And now our little collection box should be dry, so we can carry on with that. So I couldn't actually find the size of a collection box, but I'm just guessing they're going to be about 6.5, 7 inches tall. So I'm going to cut mine to 14mm, and that is 9/16 of an inch. So I'm going to start by taking my scribe and just making a little indentation in the top for the sort of money slot. So just make a sort of gentle little score first, and then you can gradually go in a little bit deeper. I'm then just going to go across that with a black pen. I'm going to stick the little sticker on, get it sort of lined up at the top and bottom there. So I'm using white crochet cotton for the handle, and I've tied a couple of knots about 3/4 of an inch, about 18mm apart. I don't know if you can actually see those there, so small. And then I'm going to trim the cotton away just at each edge of the knot, just leaving a little bit of a tail. And then I just want to glue that at the end of or at the top of the collection box. So let's put a little dot of glue each side. If you're ever struggling, just bring in your long nosed tweezers.